Nobody talked to me. A sharp breath followed. Just leave me alone for 10 minutes. My secretary gave me a brief look. The voice was coming from the waiting room. I have worked as a therapist for years. I have seen people cry, sit for hours without saying a single word, and walk through my door carrying the heaviest burdens of their lives on their shoulders. But people who fill the hallway with their anger before therapy even begins do not come my way very often. I opened the door and stepped outside. The man had collapsed into a chair in the waiting room. His elbows rested on his knees. He held his head in both hands. His breathing was uneven. He looked angry, but when I looked a little more closely, I realized it was more than anger. He was exhausted, as if he had been fighting a war no one had seen for a long time. I walked over to him. James. He raised his head. Dark purple circles surrounded his eyes. He did not look older than 30. He looked at me for a few seconds. Then he quietly stood up. Without saying a word, we went into the therapy room. I closed the door and gestured toward the chair across from me. He sat down. I placed my notebook on my lap. Instead of looking around the room, he stared at the blank wall. For about half a minute, neither of us spoke. Silence is sometimes the right place to begin, because some people do not want to hear a question before they are ready to talk. Finally, he took a deep breath. He shook his head and spoke through clenched teeth. Enough. There was more exhaustion than anger in his voice. Before we continue with this story, if you enjoy realistic therapy stories like this one, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And in the comments, share what you think. Once trust is broken in a relationship, can it truly be rebuilt? Why? I asked. He let out a bitter laugh. I wish there were only one reason. He clasped his hands together. His fingers were trembling. You know, when someone you love constantly doubts you, after a while, you even begin to doubt your own innocence. He looked away as he said it. At that moment, I understood that this was not just an argument. It was the first sentence of a burden that had been growing for a long time. Are you talking about your girlfriend? He nodded. Yes. For the first time, our eyes met. Do you think a person can be forced to prove themselves every day? I did not answer the question. Sometimes people do not want an answer. They only want to be truly heard for the first time. What happened? He took a deep breath. I went to the grocery store last night. I left my phone in the car. I came home about 15 minutes later. A pained smile appeared on his face. The moment I opened the door, she threw my phone in my face. 47 missed calls. 23 messages. Where are you? Who are you with? You're lying to me again. He lowered his head. James. I'd only gone out to buy milk. Silence settled over the room again. Was this the first time? He raised his head. There was a tired smile on his face. I wish. He took his phone out of his pocket and held the screen out to me. Now I take pictures whenever I leave the house. Pictures of what? My car's mileage, the grocery receipt, the street sign where I went. Sometimes I even take a selfie with the cashier. His voice dropped as he pulled the phone back. Because when I come home now, I don't explain where I was. After a brief pause, he whispered, I prove it. After putting the phone back in his pocket, he pressed his palms against his knees, as if his whole body would begin to shake if he did not keep his hands still. What he was describing was not merely jealousy. Every small movement in his daily life had turned into a defense prepared to prevent interrogation. When a person constantly gathers evidence in the place where they should feel safe, it shows that the roles within the relationship have already changed. He was no longer living like a partner, but like a suspect. He slowly put his phone back in his pocket. How long have you been living like this? He tilted his head toward the ceiling. Honestly, I don't even remember when it started. It began with small things. Let me know when you get home. Who are you working with today? Why did you reply to my message 5 minutes later? He shrugged. Back then, it seemed normal. I even liked it. It felt good to have someone care about me that much. He paused for a moment. Then the questions increased. While I left my phone on the table, she started looking at the screen. She asked for my password. At first, I didn't want to give it to her, but I did so there wouldn't be an argument. Then what? She wanted more. She wanted me to keep my location on all the time and to know who I ate lunch with at work. She memorized the names of my female co-workers. There was more fatigue than anger in his voice. Sometimes when I came home in the evening, the first thing she asked wasn't, "Did you miss me?" It was, "Did you talk to her today?" I would ask, "Talk to who?" She would say, "You know who." There wasn't even a real person. There was only someone she had created in her mind. "Did you ever think about leaving?" He laughed bitterly. Hundreds of times. But at the end of every argument, she would cry. She would say, "I'm just afraid of losing you." And I would soften. There was a brief silence. Because I loved her. And I still do. People often believe that love is enough to solve every problem. But love alone does not build a healthy relationship. Without trust, love gradually begins to serve fear. What was the latest incident that brought you here today? He took the phone with the cracked screen out of his pocket again. There was a single message on the screen. "If you don't answer your phone, I'm coming to your workplace." He took a deep breath. "James, she really came." "What happened when she came to your workplace?" "Reception called me. They said, 'Someone is here to see you.' When I saw the message, I knew who it was." There was a brief silence. I went downstairs. She was waiting in front of the entrance. She had coffee in her hand. To someone looking from the outside, she would have seemed like a girlfriend who wanted to surprise me. But when you looked into her eyes, you knew that wasn't what it was. What did she say? First, she looked around. Then she said, "Which one?" I didn't understand. She asked again, "Which one are you working with?" "What did you say?" "No one," I said. She didn't believe me. Then she tried to enter the building. When security wouldn't let her in, she started shouting, "You're hiding me from her. All of you are lying to me. Did your co-workers see?" He lowered his head. All of them. Even my boss. For the first time in my life, I wanted the ground to swallow me from embarrassment. He did not speak for a while. When we got home that evening, she started crying. She apologized. She said the same thing again. "I'm just afraid of losing you. It won't happen again." But it happens again every time. How do you behave after incidents like these? He answered without thinking about my question. More carefully. I check it more often. I never put my phone on silent. I text her when I go into a meeting and write again when I come out. I call when I get in the car. I video call when I'm getting close to home. He smiled bitterly. But it's never enough. Fear is not an emotion that can be satisfied with proof. Every answer gives birth to a new question. Which of those things are you doing because you want to? The man did not answer for a long time. Then he looked away. None of them. There was surprise on his face as he gave that answer. As if he, too, were hearing the word for the first time. Sometimes a person adapts to someone else's demands for so long that they can no longer tell whether what they are doing is a choice or an obligation. At that moment, the atmosphere in the room changed. Because for the first time, he had begun talking not about his girlfriend's behavior, but about when he had lost his own boundaries. After the man said his last sentence, the silence stretched on. I did not write anything in my notebook. Some people feel judged when they see someone taking notes. That was not what he needed at that moment. I'm going to ask you a strange question. In every incident you described, we talked about your girlfriend behavior. But have you ever done anything that could have shaken her trust? The expression on his face changed as soon as I finished the question. He looked away from me. Finally, he took a deep breath. No, he did not finish his sentence. I waited. When people become uncomfortable with silence, they often move a little closer to the truth. At least not recently. This time, I wrote 2 words in my notebook. Not recently. The man noticed. You got stuck on that phrase. I noticed it. He lowered his head. Before. He fell silent again and shook his head. Never mind. If you're here today, part of the answer is probably there. He clasped his fingers together. Whenever I try to talk about the past, I feel like I'm defending myself. I'm not asking you to defend yourself. I'm only asking you to tell me what happened. Can I ask you something? Of course. Can a person be punished for one mistake for the rest of their life? He was asking the question not to me, but to himself. First, I need to know what that mistake was. He closed his eyes and rested his head against the back of the chair. For years ago. Then he fell silent. No, I still can't say it. For the first time during the session, I saw fear in his eyes. A fear stronger than anger, exhaustion, and shame. Because when some people speak about a mistake they made, they are not afraid of becoming guilty again in the eyes of the person in front of them, but in their own. I placed my notebook on the table. Look at me. I'm not here to judge you. I know. Are you sure? A pained smile appeared. No. He took a deep breath. I cheated on her 4 years ago. Silence settled over the room again. He immediately lowered his head. It was one night of stupidity. I was on a business trip. I had been drinking. The moment I woke up the next morning, I hated what I had done. He clasped his hands together. I could have chosen not to tell her. No one knew, but I had to tell her. Why? Because I wouldn't have been able to look her in the face. His voice was trembling. The day I came home, I told her everything. She cried. She shouted. She threw my belongings outside the door. And she was right. He had said that last sentence without a moment's thought. What did you do? I left. I never called again, because the decision had to be hers now. He wiped his eyes. 2 weeks later, she called me herself. She said, "I'm going to try to forgive you." That day, I thought I had been given the greatest second chance of my life. After a while, he continued. From that day on, I never lied again. I gave her the password to my phone. I turned on my location. I answered every question she asked. I cut my female friends out of my life. If she told me to change jobs, I changed jobs. If she told me not to work late, I didn't. I canceled plans with friends. His face had completely fallen. I've been doing the same thing every day for 4 years. At first, I thought it was part of repairing the relationship. I believed that if I was transparent, patient, and hid nothing, trust would slowly return. But as time passed, the rules did not decrease. They only multiplied. I knew I had to pay for what I had done. But James, how long does a person serve a sentence for one mistake? I did not answer him immediately. The most dangerous thing in a therapy room is giving easy answers. Do you think she is still punishing you today, or are you now allowing her fear to control you? He looked at me for a long time. But I don't know. And sometimes that is the exact moment when therapy truly begins. Not when a person loses all their answers, but when they encounter the right question for the first time. The man quietly leaned back in the chair. The man who had seemed angry at the beginning of the session was gone. Only someone tired remained in his place. You can't change what you did 4 years ago. He nodded. I know, but you can change what you have been doing for the past 4 years. He looked at me in surprise. What do you mean? How many times has she checked your phone in the last 4 years? He let out a short laugh. I stopped counting. Your location? Every day. Your emails? Some of them. Your social media? All of it. Your messages with your family? He lowered his head. Sometimes she reads those too. I closed my notebook, and none of it made her trust you. He did not answer, because he knew the answer. Trust is not built by collecting evidence, unless the fear inside a person heals. Even if you place all the proof in the world in front of them, they will find a new reason to doubt. The man listened to me in silence. Do you know what has exhausted me the most? I'm not trying to avoid arguments anymore. I'm trying not to be misunderstood. The first thing I think when I wake up in the morning is, what should I do today so there won't be a fight? How many minutes do I have to reply to a message? Should I warn her in advance if a meeting runs long? Should I take a picture if there's a line at the register? What happens if my phone dies? He took a deep breath. James, I'm not living my life anymore. I'm constantly explaining myself. I waited for a moment. I'm going to tell you something difficult. You have been trying to save your relationship for 4 years, but you have never asked whether your girlfriend was truly ready to forgive you. Silence settled over the room again. She said she had forgiven me. Forgiveness does not mean saying, I'm not leaving. Forgiveness means not giving the same punishment again every day. He lowered his head. For the first time, he began to cry, quietly, without making a sound. And at that moment, I thought, sometimes what ends a relationship is not betrayal. Sometimes what ends it is the never-ending shadow of betrayal. After wiping away his tears, the man did not speak for a long time. I did not break the silence either, because sometimes people need time to understand the truth they have just heard. After a while, he looked at me. So, what am I supposed to do? I'm asked this question often. People think therapists give answers, but my job is not to make decisions. I only help people see their decisions more clearly. I leaned slightly toward him. I'm not going to tell you to leave. I'm not going to tell you to stay either. But if this relationship is going to continue, it cannot continue by you offering more proof every day. She needs to relearn how to trust, and you need to rebuild your boundaries. He lowered his eyes to the floor. What if she can't? then both of you will keep serving the same sentence. You for the mistake you made 4 years ago, and she for the pain she experienced 4 years ago. And neither of you will be able to live in the present. Silence settled over us one last time. The man slowly stood up. He walked toward the door. After placing his hand on the handle, he stopped. Without turning around, he spoke. For the first time, I don't just feel guilty. I feel tired too. That's important. Why? Because guilt ties a person to the past. Exhaustion shows that change can no longer be postponed. He nodded slightly and left the room. The door slowly closed. I wrote one final sentence in the notebook on my desk. Some people do not leave because of betrayal. Others are worn down by the endless judgment that follows it. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting the past. But if you have decided to continue a relationship, making the other person relive the past in every argument is not forgiveness either. Trauma can explain behavior. Mistrust can be understandable. The scars left by betrayal are real too. But no pain gives anyone the right to control another person's life. Love is not a never-ending courtroom. Because when a relationship becomes a place where two people punish each other, no one ever wins.